Imagine this. It's March 28, 2017, and a commercial aircraft takes off from one of Europe's busiest airports. Inside the cockpit, two highly experienced pilots sense something fundamentally wrong, yet nobody on the ground suspects anything. The question that haunted investigators for weeks was simple yet spine-chilling. How could two skilled professionals, commanding a modern aircraft with countless safety systems, nearly trigger a mid-air collision that would have changed aviation history forever? This is the extraordinary and deeply troubling story of Air France Flight 1414. Today, we invite you to journey with us into one of aviation's most perplexing mysteries, where human judgment collided with technological complexity in ways nobody anticipated. Whether you're an aviation enthusiast or simply curious about real-world disasters, this episode promises to reveal secrets that will fundamentally change how you understand modern aircraft safety. The fateful evening. On that evening in Paris, the Charles de Gaulle airport bustled with activity as darkness settled over the runway. Air France Flight 1414 was preparing for its final departure of the day, a routine journey to Zurich carrying 35 passengers total. The aircraft chosen was an Airbus A320, a member of the popular A320 family, with advanced technological systems designed to protect against human error. The two pilots commanding this flight weren't rookies. The captain boasted over 9,500 flight hours, including 6,700 hours specifically on a 320 family aircraft, while his 36-year-old first officer had accumulated 5,500 hours, mostly on the same aircraft. They had flown this Paris-Zurich route together more than 100 times, transforming them not just into colleagues but genuine friends who understood each other's flying style intimately. Despite their impressive credentials and the aircraft's modern systems, neither pilot could predict the unusual combination of factors that would make this particular flight a turning point in aviation safety history. The recipe for disaster. As the aircraft lifted off from runway 27 left, several conditions converged to create an unprecedented situation. The plane carried only 35 passengers instead of its maximum capacity of 132, meaning it was considerably lighter than usual. Additionally, the pilots had made an unconventional decision to use full thrust for takeoff rather than the reduced power method that most airlines employ. Normally, commercial pilots utilize a technique called flex temperature, essentially tricking the engines into producing less power by suggesting the air is hotter than it actually is. This approach conserves fuel, reduces noise, and extends engine life. Yet the Air France crew decided to experiment differently that evening. The combination of a light aircraft, powerful engines operating at maximum capacity, and an aggressive takeoff angle created a dangerous mixture that the Airbus' safety systems were unspecifically designed to handle safely. Within seconds of leaving the ground, the aircraft's nose climbed sharply to nearly 20 degrees, a steep angle that most commercial flights never approach during normal operations. When safety systems collide 6 seconds after takeoff, something unexpected happened that changed the entire trajectory of this flight. The climb angle reached 24.6 degrees as the first officer continued pulling the sidestick backward, signaling the aircraft to climb steeply. The Airbus A320 family incorporates multiple sophisticated digital protection systems, including pitch protection designed to prevent the nose from tilting too high, especially when wing flaps remain extended. The aircraft's computers detected that the climb angle had exceeded safe parameters and automatically engaged what's called alpha floor protection, a system designed specifically to prevent stalls by keeping the plane's angle of attack within safe limits. However, in attempting to protect the aircraft from one danger, the system inadvertently activated another critical safety mode, toggle lock, an emergency procedure normally reserved for crisis situations like aborted landings. Toggle lock forces the engines to maximum power and holds them there until pilots manually reset the system, a feature that proved dangerously inappropriate for an aircraft already operating at full power during a routine climb. The confusing climb, the cockpit erupted into controlled chaos as systems triggered in rapid succession. The flight director screen, which normally guides pilots through complex maneuvers, suddenly went blank, leaving the first officer without his primary visual reference. The toggle lock indicator appeared on the display, telling the pilots that their engines were locked in full emergency mode despite no emergency existing. 13 seconds after this malfunction began, the first officer recognized the problem and moved to correct it by switching off the auto thrust system using the thrust lever switches. 8 seconds later, he re-engaged the system using the proper procedure, pushing the designated button on the glare shield and moving the levers to climb setting. The aircraft's systems finally responded correctly to pilot input, and the plane continued climbing as intended, its flaps retracting and speed increasing appropriately. From an external perspective, the remainder of the flight appeared completely normal, and the aircraft landed safely in Zurich just over an hour after takeoff, leaving no visible damage or obvious consequences. The second flight nightmare. The real crisis emerged just 2 days later, on March 30, 2017. That same captain and first officer were assigned to ferry an empty Airbus A321 from Toulouse, home to Airbus's headquarters, to Paris. The A321 is stretched significantly compared to the A318, making it vulnerable to tail strikes if pilots pull the nose up too aggressively during departure. Paradoxically, rather than learning from their previous unusual experience, the pilots decided this empty ferry flight was the perfect opportunity to investigate what had caused the toga lock malfunction 2 days earlier. They deliberately planned another full-thrust takeoff, explicitly designed to recreate the conditions that had triggered the safety system anomaly before, with no passengers, minimal crew, and complete awareness of what they were attempting. The pilots pushed the engines to maximum power on runway 14 left and began their aggressive climb. The near catastrophe, what happened next, transformed a controlled experiment into a terrifying emergency that no one saw coming. As the aircraft climbed through 19,000 feet at an extreme climb rate of 15,000 feet per minute, comparable to fighter jet performance, an alarm sounded in a completely different aircraft cruising at 40,000 feet above that higher altitude aircraft had detected the A321 climbing toward its flight path, triggering TCAs, the traffic collision avoidance system designed to alert pilots of potential mid-air conflicts. Remarkably, the pilots of the ascending A321 never received any warning about the other aircraft, because TCAs deliberately remain silent during extreme vertical maneuvers, assuming either an emergency exists or a small aircraft is taking off. The aircraft below reached 19,000 feet, dangerously close to the other plane's altitude, though they never made actual contact. If the aircraft above had been flying just slightly lower, or if the timing had been marginally different, the result would have been a catastrophic collision with no survivors. Lessons from the sky. When investigators analyzed the flight data and interviewed the pilots, they discovered something troubling. There was no mechanical failure, no system malfunction, and no weather-related issue. The entire incident resulted from a deliberate decision to conduct an unscheduled, unreported experiment in busy airspace without proper risk assessment or air traffic control awareness. The pilots had manipulated the aircraft's energy state by briefly descending to build speed, then suddenly pulling the nose up steeply, creating dangerous flight conditions that destabilized the aircraft. While managing aircraft energy through such techniques isn't inherently incorrect, executing them without full awareness in congested airspace with other traffic is extraordinarily risky. This incident became a pivotal case study in aviation, teaching pilots and instructors worldwide about the dangers of complacency. Born from experience and the critical importance of following established procedures, we'd love to hear your thoughts on this extraordinary story. Do you believe these pilots should have faced stronger consequences, or do you understand their perspective? Subscribe to the World Documentaries to explore more fascinating aviation mysteries and real-world stories that will expand your understanding of how our world actually works. Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below, and join our growing community of curious minds discovering the truth behind extraordinary events.